Imagine it takes an empire 200 years to get rich, and then it breaks because of its own wealth in just 20 to 30 years. Why? Because the moment big money arrives, a new rule begins. Everything starts to feel easy, and that easy is where the damage starts. At first, taxes stay low, people work hard, and production grows. Then the empire starts believing its success will last forever, its army gets bigger, its borders stretch farther, expensive projects begin, and leaders start thinking, this money will never run out. But one day, the real truth shows up in the treasury. Spending has become bigger than income. So the empire looks for quick fixes, loans, more debt, weakening the currency, and pushing higher taxes onto ordinary people. And that is where trust begins to break. Markets get more expensive, wages fall behind, corruption moves ahead, and people stop believing in the system. Spain pulled huge amounts of silver from the Americas, but its own industry died. Britain ruled the world, but debt and war costs shook the pound. The Soviet Union poured everything into weapons while the economy dried up from the inside. And today the United States has bases all over the world, but its debt is so massive that the question is not, how strong is it? The question is, how long can it last? Welcome to the Epoch Economics, where money, power, and history come together. This video is about the pattern behind all of this. Not bad kings, not one battle, not one mistake. A pattern that repeats when wealth turns into comfort and comfort turns into weakness. First, let's define what rich means for an empire. Rich does not only mean gold in a vault. It means the empire can pay soldiers on time, build roads, feed cities, and run a giant government machine. It means the empire has extra money after paying for basic survival. And that extra money is powerful, but also dangerous, because wealth changes behavior. When survival is hard, leaders are careful. When money feels endless, leaders take on promises they cannot keep. This is what historians call imperial overstretch, when an empire spreads its military and commitments beyond what its economy can carry. Here's the simple version. If your income is 10, but your spending becomes 12, you have a problem. Empires solve that problem the same ways people do. They borrow, they raise taxes, or they change the money. Now we'll walk through the 7-step rich empire trap. And as we go, you'll see Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union, and a warning for today. Step 1. The engine works. The empire grows because it produces real things: food, tools, trade, ships, farms, mines, factories. Taxes are not crushing, so people still want to work. The government collects enough money without breaking the people. Step 2. Wealth arrives fast. Sometimes it's trade, sometimes it's conquest, and sometimes it's a flood of treasure. Spain is the classic example. Silver from the Americas poured into the empire. But here's the twist. Treasure feels like free money, and free money makes leaders lazy about building the real engine. Step 3. Spending becomes a lifestyle. The empire builds bigger armies. It fights more wars. It promises more benefits. It creates more jobs inside the government, and every new promise becomes normal. Step 4. The bills arrive. Then a bad year comes. A war costs more than expected. A harvest fails. A rival rises. And suddenly the math breaks. Spending is bigger than income. Spain hit this hard. Even with silver coming in, Spain repeatedly defaulted, basically saying, "We can't pay right now." And during Philip II's reign, Spain faced multiple state payment crises, including major breakdowns like 1557, 1575, 1596. Step 5. The panic fixes. Leaders now need money fast, so they do what almost every stressed empire does. They borrow more, they raise taxes, they sell offices to friends, they squeeze merchants, they squeeze farmers. But there's a limit. If taxes get too heavy, people stop producing, the economy shrinks, and the empire gets even weaker. Step 6. Trust breaks, the invisible collapse. This is the part most people miss. Empires don't only fall when walls fall, they fall when trust falls. Trust is what makes people accept the money. Trust is what makes lenders give loans. Trust is what makes allies stay loyal. Trust is what makes workers believe tomorrow will be better. When trust starts dying, you see symptoms. Prices rise. Corruption spreads. People hide wealth. Trade slows down. The best workers leave or give up. Britain shows a version of this in modern form. In September 1931, Britain abandoned the gold standard during a crisis around sterling. That moment matters because it shows how fast confidence can change when the world doubts a currency. Step 7. The empire still looks strong until it doesn't. This is the final trick. Big empires can look powerful right up to the end. They still have flags, still have ceremonies, still have soldiers, still have big buildings. But inside, the engine is broken. The Soviet Union is a good example of strain. Studies have discussed very high defense burdens in the late Soviet period, figures around the mid-teens as a share of GDP in some estimates. When too much of a country's energy goes into military spending, less is left for normal life, factories, housing, food systems, and innovation. Now let's connect it all. The story is not rich makes you evil. The story is rich makes it easier to avoid hard choices until hard choices become unavoidable. And this is why you see the same chain again and again. Overreach, debt, money problems, trust problems, fragmentation, collapse. Spain had silver, but it did not build enough productive strength at home, and it lived on flows it didn't fully control. Britain had a global system, but crises showed that even the strongest currency can be forced to bend when reserves and confidence run out. The Soviet Union had power, but heavy commitments and weak economic flexibility made the system brittle. And now we get to the uncomfortable modern mirror. The United States has an enormous global footprint, often described as roughly 750 bases in at least 80 countries. That might look like strength, but history asks a colder question. Can the economy carry the commitments without breaking trust at home? Here's the revelation, in one line. Empires don't collapse because they become weak first. They collapse because they become comfortable first. Comfort creates habits, habits create promises, promises create costs, costs create debt, debt pressures the money. And when money and trust break, everything else follows. So the question is not, which empire is next? The real question is, what does an empire do the moment it realizes it is living past its own limits? If this video helped you see the pattern more clearly, subscribe for more. History does not repeat perfectly, but it repeats enough to warn you.